Hello, everybody. I'm going to be going through a brief introduction to a concept within astrology that I have referred to and will likely continue to refer to often on this channel. A concept within astrology that I know not everybody is immediately familiar with, and that is Antiscia. This isn't a deep dive. We're not going to go over everything about Antiscia, really just the basics, what you need to know, how to start using them, because while they're not the same thing as a traditional aspect, like a trine or a sextile or a square, they are often regarded by those who use them as sort of second-class aspects, or somehow being less important than traditional aspects, and sort of like a side thing that, like, oh, cool if you caught that. I, however, believe that they should be taught alongside traditional aspect doctrine. Because I think in terms of ways for two planets or points in a chart to have a relationship, which is what geometry-based aspects like the square or the sextile are, the Antiscia is at least equal in importance and in descriptive capacity. And I initially decided to record this because my intention was to record something amending a topic I had discussed in the forecast for this week related to the Mars-Pluto opposition, something which I overlooked. And because it relates to Antiscia, I figured it would be a good opportunity to do a little tutorial on what Antiscia are and how to find them so that, so you guys know what I'm talking about. But rather than do them as one video, because I realize that they are kind of discrete topics, I'm going to publish both at the same time. And if you want to, after this introduction to Antiscia, see an example of Antiscia in a chart, you can jump to the next video after this and catch this additional angle to the Mars-Pluto opposition. Otherwise, if you just want to know what Antiscia are about, let's dive in. So, Antiscia are essentially points that mirror each other across the solstice line. From a zodiacal perspective, the solstice points are represented by, on the summer side, the cusp of Cancer, and on the winter side, the cusp of Capricorn. These are the points which represent the longest day of the year and the longest night of the year, respectively, at least when the sun is at those points, right? While Contra-Antiscia are points which mirror each other across the vernal and autumnal equinox points. These are points which demarcate the beginning of spring and autumn, right? They are also both points in the year where the day and night are equal in length. Except when we reach the vernal equinox, when we reach spring, the day starts to become longer and longer and longer until we reach the summer solstice. While when we reach the autumnal equinox, the day starts to get shorter and shorter and shorter until we reach the longest night, the winter solstice. So when we're looking at these mirroring points along the solstice line, the Antiscia, we're looking at points that mirror each other in terms of the length of the day and night. They have the same ratio of day to night. It's that simple. So say you have a planet at 3 degrees of Gemini. To find the Antiscia point of that planet, you count how many degrees from that point to the solstice line, to 0 degrees of Cancer. So if we're at 2 degrees of Gemini, we just count, it's 28 degrees. And then we project 28 degrees from the solstice line again in the other direction. So we get 28 degrees of Cancer. So 2 degrees of Gemini, 28 degrees of Cancer. These are mirroring points. And these are especially important to catch because they don't share a traditional aspect. They are in signs that are in aversion to each other. They're not sextile or trine or square or anything, which is why many people refer to them as secret aspects or secret conjunctions with the Antiscia. And while they are perhaps secret in the fact that we don't see them often, or when we're not looking for them, we don't know that they're there in the chart, but there's nothing secret about the way they work, about the way that they show up in your life. The way they show up in your life. So if you have, Mars at 2 degrees of Gemini and the sun at 28 degrees of Gemini, well, sorry about your luck, but you got a sun-Mars thing, or congratulations, you have a sun-Mars thing. And then similarly, we do the same thing basically with the Contra-Antiscia, except we do it from the equinox point. So say you have a planet at 14 degrees of Capricorn. The easiest thing for you to do is look for the nearest equinox point. In this case, it would be Aries. You want to count how many degrees your 14 degrees Capricorn planet is from that 0 degrees of Aries. So we just do the math from 14 degrees Capricorn to the end of Capricorn. That's what, 16 degrees. And then we just add 30 for the whole sign of Aquarius and 30 for the whole sign of Pisces. We end up with 76 degrees. And we just do the same math, projected forward this time from 0 degrees Aries, and we end up with 16 degrees of Gemini. So if you happen to have a planet at 16 degrees of Gemini, you may have thought that those two planets weren't in aspect to each other or didn't have a relationship. They couldn't see each other. Well, it turns out they do. They have this connection called Contra-Antiscia. Now, there's a whole set of ideas, different sets of ideas even, which assign a certain quality to these relationships. You know, with a trine, we're dealing with a 120-degree angle between planets. This is a smooth, harmonious relationship. The two get along, everything's peachy, everything goes great, theoretically anyway. Just like with the square, you know, the two planets, they bump into each other, or they have a contentious relationship. They are at odds, they disagree. But there's kind of different ideas about what these Antiscia and Contra-Antiscia relationships mean, or what the quality of those relationships are. But I don't want to go into that here. This is just basics of Antiscia and Contra-Antiscia. Not because I don't think it matters, but because I think some of those ideas that get thrown out there are a little confusing. And I think for starting purposes, you can really just start with noting that anything that shares a relationship along these points, any set of planets or planet with a angle or some other point in your chart have a Antiscia or Contra-Antiscia relationship with each other, they have a relationship. Start and, you know, look for that relationship in your life or in the life of the person whose chart you're looking at. Because to a large degree, even with, you know, traditional geometry-based aspects, the nature of the planets in aspect to each other is just as, if not more important than the nature of the geometric relationship between the two. So if it's Mars and the moon that are in relationship to each other, they're going to interact the way Mars and the moon do, which is, you know, that great. But if it's, you know, Venus and Jupiter, regardless of the nature of the relationship, their interaction is going to tend to be more positive. So if you discover a connection between planets or points through these Antiscia or these Contra-Antiscia, start with the combination and work from there. And, you know, let me know in the comments. Are you discovering anything in your chart? Do you have any Antiscia connections? And how are they showing up in your life? I'd love to see what kind of Antiscia you got going on. Also, you know, I think half the reason that Antiscia aren't used more often is because the name doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, right? Trine, square, like, oh, those are so easy to say and remember. But Antiscia kind of turns your brain off a little bit when you hear it, right? So I'm kind of on a mission. I'd really love to come up with a new name for these things, or an easier term that people will remember, that people will feel comfortable using to, you know, put Antiscia on the map, right? I believe in Antiscia, right? I want to see Antiscia being taught alongside traditional aspects and to be as recognizable as trines and sextiles one day. So if you got an idea for a name, leave that in the comments too. Maybe together we can come up with something that's a little catchier, a little sexier, a little easier to remember. I like to use Tishy. You know, Mars and Saturn, they're in a bit of a tissue right now. They're not really, but you know what I'm saying, right? But, you know, let me know what your thoughts are. And if you're good, you want to move on, you now know more about Antiscia than you did 10 minutes ago. But if you want to see some Antiscia in action and you're not uncomfortable examining the astrology of some, you know, spooky events, then go ahead and click on the little box here, right there, and tune into the next video for that. All right, thanks. See you guys next time.